Welcome to the latest episode of the evgeek podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and today we are thrilled to introduce you to Matt Harris, a proud new owner of a Nissan Leaf. In this episode, Matt will share his journey of transitioning to electric mobility from the initial excitement to the practicalities of driving and range anxiety. Join us as we dive into his experience, insights, and joys of embracing sustainable transportation with the Nissan Leaf. Let's get charged up. Hello and welcome to the podcast today, everyone. We are joined by Matt Harris, who is new to the electric vehicle world. Matt and I met a few weeks ago through a local EV Facebook group here in Arkansas. Found out that he was a Nissan Leaf owner, so I thought it'd be cool to get him on the podcast and give us a review of his Leaf. So before we get started, welcome to the podcast, Matt. How you doing today?
Hey, doing pretty good. Appreciate it.
So why don't you take a few minutes and tell us about yourself?
Oh, Matt Harris. I live in Fayetteville. It's just me and my husband. Work up in Bentonville up at Walmart, like everybody else who lives in this corner of the state. I don't. I'm kind of a car guy a little bit, but I've always liked little cars. That's kind of what attracted me to the Leaf anyway. I've had Honda Civics. I think the biggest car I've ever owned was a two-door Toyota Tacoma.
Oh, wow.
So I've always liked little hatchbacks, things like that. So never been kind of a big car guy. So
not muscle cars, just the small cars.
Yeah, little car.
So tell us.
I like them all, but more along the lines. I'm kind of a practical person. So.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about your particular Nissan Leaf.
So it's a 2022 SV. It's not the Plus, so it's the lower range. I think says it'll do about 150 to 160 on the range. I don't drive anything like that in a single day, so I really wasn't concerned. But I was able to get it used. It only had 11,000 miles on it. It was kind of I don't want to say last minute decision. I've been looking on and off. I've kind of addicted to YouTube. I get something in my brain and I'll sit there and look at, YouTube videos for days and days trying to make decisions on things. And so I've kind of had it in the back of my mind, I wanted to try an EV for a while, but I just, like I said, I'm pretty practical. I don't want to try anything new. I kind of always like to buy slightly used cars, nothing new. Let somebody else handle the depreciation on them, Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, so I just kind of went for the Leaf. It was that specific one was a last minute. I was just scrolling the pages and looking at dealers, what they had available for use. And this one popped up after that new EV tax rebate of $4,000 on used EVs. It was only $14,000 for for a 2-year-old car with only 11,000 miles on it. So it's still under the factory warranty. They warranty their batteries close to 100,000 miles. Yeah. So
was it hard to get that tax credit through the dealership, or is it pretty easy? Just fill out the paperwork and get it.
The easiest thing, they've changed it from what I understand this year. Mm-hmm. Now it's automatically through the dealership. So you don't have to do any of the work. They don't send you a check. They basically take it off the front end and the check goes to the dealership. But I mean, that's how you're able to get the car so cheap to begin with. So I really wasn't too concerned with that. And I had a Jeep Renegade 2018 that I traded in on it. Mm-hmm. So actually it was an even trade. They took the Jeep and gave me that. So I gave them a 2018 Jeep with about 40,000 miles on it, a base model Renegade, and they gave me this Leaf. So I have a newer car with a warranty, no payment.
Wow.
Great deal. So.
And you haven't had it that long, have you?
No, just 2 weeks. Working on 2 weeks.
Yeah, I figured. Yep, I think it wasn't a long time. It was 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I love it already. It's my first time to ever drive an EV. I've ridden in a Tesla before. I know some people with them, so I'm kind of familiar with it. It's my first time ever actually driving one. And I'm kind of hooked from day one. I mean, I know it's just a Leaf and it's the lowest power one they have, but I mean, I'm so used to small, low-powered cars anyway. Our other car is a Subaru Crosstrek, which is probably the most underpowered new vehicle you can buy today. I mean, I think I don't even know how many horsepower it is. I think it's less than 200. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, jumping into that instant torque is pretty amazing.
So what inspired you to finally make the transition to electric? You said you've had gas vehicles this whole time. What made you jump there?
I've been looking, and I didn't want another car payment, so I was like, well, I got 2 cars basically paid off. So it kind of fell into my lap that way. I was able to get a newer vehicle with no payment, so that helped.
Mm.
But ultimately, it was kind of the, having to go back to the office. Like I said, I live in Fayetteville and I work in Bentonville. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been working 50% of the time at home, so I don't have to commute. It's 25 miles to my office. Well, recently, like everybody else these days, a lot of folks are having to go back to the office, not being able to work at home anymore. And I found out starting in about 6 months, I'm going to have to be in the office full time again. So I was looking at 50 miles a day of commuting. So I was
Gotcha.
like, I love that Subaru. I mean, I love that vehicle, and I didn't want to put a lot of miles on it. I mean, it's our traveling vehicle. We just went to a trip to Canada a few months ago in that thing. I love driving it on road trips, and it was getting up there in age and almost out of warranty. And I thought, what is something I could do to just maybe only drive that a little bit? Because luckily, my husband works like 3 miles from our house. So the 2
Oh,
days a week he goes in driving the Subaru, he's not going to be putting any miles on it anyway. So that was kind of when I found that out, I'm going to have to start commuting 50 miles a day. I was like, I'm going to take this leap and go electric. I've been thinking about it for so long. Why not go ahead and do it?
gotcha. So how does driving this Leaf compare with driving, a gas-powered vehicle?
Really, for me, since I'm using it locally, I haven't had to deal with the charging infrastructure. And that's kind of the one thing some people I would recommend, like with a Leaf, don't have it as your primary vehicle. I mean, there's lots of good EVs out there that you could live with primarily, but I don't think I'd ever drive this thing out of Northwest Arkansas. Maybe to Fort Smith. I found one old Chatamo Charger down there at a truck stop in Roland, Oklahoma. It's the only one in the Fort Smith area. So if I had to, I would do that. But other than that, I mean, it'll be 99+% of the time charging at home every night. So that's kind of the big thing with that. But
So what kind of charge? So what kind of charging do you do at home? Do you just do a 110 or 220? What do you do?
It's 220. It's a level 2. It came with the
Mm-hmm.
car.
Okay.
So didn't have to even buy one there. I just had an electrician install a new outlet by my electrical panel in my garage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been charging it at home every night. And the Leaf has a nice charge timer in it. So if you're part of one of those electric companies that has I don't know what they call it, where they charge more during the day for power, you can set a timer on it. So I have a
Yep.
timer. It starts at 10 p.m. every night.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
So
Gotcha.
yeah.
So what features of the Leaf do you find to be the most beneficial and enjoyable?
Honestly, for me, it's its size. It's a small hatchback. I mean, I feel like I have two. I mean, I have two small hatchbacks in the driveway now. The Crosstrek and the Leaf. So that's my favorite part of it. It's easy to park, easy to get around. I kind of like I was saying, I like everything small. I live in a small house. It's only like about 900 square feet. So everything, around here is kind of tight parking and stuff. And it handles great out on the interstate too. It's got all the lane departure warning type stuff in it. It's got all the safety features. It's comfortable, and like I said, I'm mainly using it to commute in. It's a good vehicle. It's not. I think some people think the Leafs are, maybe just like a Nissan Versa with a battery in it. Just this cheap. But from my view, I mean, it's more comparable with like maybe a mid-level Nissan Altima, maybe as far as comfort wise. It's just a good everyday around commuter car, and I think that's what kind of drew me to it. I didn't want anything that I could drive across country in. I mean, this really truly is a second vehicle for our household, and it's a tool to just get around town on the weekends and commute in. And that I think the Leaf fits that bucket perfectly, especially for the price. You cannot beat the price on the used ones.
Yep, that is true. So what do you anticipate maintenance or upkeep on this car as compared to your conventional car? I mean, do you think it'd be the same? Do you think you're going to win out in the end? What do you think?
I think I'm definitely going to win out in the end, and that went a lot. Like I said, I can't tell you how many hours of YouTube videos I watched people reviewing Leafs over the last 5 years. Probably 3 months of my spare time has just been watching car reviews. It's definitely going to be less. I mean, obviously there's no oil changes, nothing to go wrong. It's got a good warranty on it. Talking to some people about the Leaf specifically, there's more concern with those of the battery degrading faster over time because they don't have a thermal management battery system in like most new EVs do. They're air cooled. So I don't think they'd work great. I wouldn't want to own one if I lived in Phoenix or, up in northern Canada or something in winter. So But around here, 25 miles, and 20 of the 25 miles is on the interstate, just easy back and forth. Anyway, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. But back to your last question on the maintenance piece, I definitely don't think there really will be any. I know Nissan, to keep their warranties up, they want you to bring it in once a year. They do a test on the battery just to make sure it's operating.
Wow, I didn't know that. Cool, that's
yeah,
cool.
And it's free of charge too. As
Oh,
long
cool.
as the vehicle is under warranty, they don't charge you to do that. You just bring it in once a year. They hook it up to the computer. Cool. I have no idea what you're looking for. Because of that warranty, they'll replace any dead cells in the battery free of charge up to 100,000 miles. So I really, I have no concerns with the maintenance. I guess just tires, just like, but that, I'm looking forward to that. No more oil changes, no more, if you have transmission problems. I mean, from what I read, they just nothing really goes wrong with them.
So what advice would you give to someone if they were considering purchasing an electric vehicle, particularly a Nissan Leaf?
Kind of like I said before, me personally, just from what I know of them and what I've read other people's reviews, don't ever buy one as a primary car unless you never leave town. Because they truly are an in-town car. Go get your groceries, run your errands, have a little fun on the weekend, commute to work. I mean, I would feel comfortable, like no range anxiety with it, knowing that I was going to drive about 120 miles less per day. It says it's rated 160. And from what I can tell, if you aren't using the AC or anything like that, that's probably pretty accurate. But if you really drive it like a normal car, you crank the AC on, I'm not saying be an aggressive driver, but don't be a grinding out there either. Just drive normal. I think it's going to be probably about 130 mile range on, which for what I do is amazing. So that would be my number one thing. Don't let it be a primary car. It needs to be a second car for your household if you ever want to leave town. Secondly, my opinion, don't buy a new one. There are so many deals on used ones out there. I found anywhere from about the numbers I'm stating here are after that EV tax credit. So as long as you qualify for that EV tax credit, I've seen as low as, for what I found, mine for 14 to as high as 20 for used ones that are less than 2 years old and less than 20,000 miles. And I mean, the sticker price on this car new was slightly over 30,000. My opinion, the Leaf is a good car. I don't think it's 30,000 good. I would not buy a new one, mainly because of what I said, the range on it. There's many more options out there, I think, between 30 and 40,000 that are going to give you well into the 200s on the range. I mean, there's a lot of Hyundais.
That is true. That is true. Yep.
Well, that's my second thing. Definitely buy a used one because you can get them. I mean, it's great money. But that new EV tax credit, I'm not familiar with how it was done in the past because it's my new, first time owner here, but that goes a long way because, like I said, it was an even trade for that old Jeep. If I wouldn't have gotten that credit, I'd have had to throw out another $4,000 for this car, which even then, because my Jeep was paid off, for me, it would have been kind of a hard sell because of the range, but it kind of all worked out with that. So yeah, really,
have you tried DC fast charging this thing yet? Or have you done all your charging at home?
I did one time. There is an old Chatamo charger. I think that's what they're called, Chatamo. There's one of those at the Rogers Walmart, Pleasant Grove Road, right off the interstate. So one day when I went up there, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try it, see how it works. And I think I was about 50% battery because I didn't charge the night before. I just sat there for about 15 minutes and it brought it up to 70%. Okay. So I figured, I can't remember the kilowatts on the battery pack. It's not much, but I think even if you were below 20%, it would charge you from 20 to 80% in 30 to 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
It's not the best, but it could be worse. For me, I'll probably just use it in an emergency situation. Luckily enough, where I live in Fayetteville, I live incredibly close to the Nissan dealership. And they were, kind enough that, if your power ever goes out or anything like that, you're welcome to bring it by here.
Which just happened recently up there to a bunch of y'all up there with the storms coming through. Yes.
Yes. I mean, speaking of that, that is amazing. The dividing line with Springdale there. I mean, I don't even think it rained at my house in Fayetteville tonight, but I have friends and coworkers that were hit hard at Fayetteville. So yeah, it was pretty rough for them up there.
And I mean, that's what people are scared of with electric vehicles. They're like, what if it storms? What if the electricity goes out? And knowing that, you could take it somewhere, to charge or something like that. Or, if you're charged up before, you're not going to have that issue. It's just going to sit there, not use any power. You're not going to have any issues if you're just going to be without power for just a few days.
And that's another thing too, because it is that second car in town, like I've said numerous times, I'm not really concerned about any future battery, degrading on it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if it's still got 95% on the battery, I'm plugging it in every night, just in the habit. That way, every time I need to use it, it's got a full charge. So that that's kind of a good thing about being able to charge at home like that. But there's not very many of those CHAdeMO connectors. Like I did my research, and funny enough, when I test drove the car, because I was a little anxious about the range because it was my first one, I picked it up at the dealership, which I said is very close to my house, and I drove it all the way to my office, turned around in the parking lot, and drove all the way back home. And then drove around town a bit to simulate, hey, if I take a lunch break or leave the office for a little bit and then come back, how's my range going to do? And it was still at about 65%.
Oh, wow.
So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is perfect. I mean, I could get, 2.5 days worth of driving to work if I had to without charging. So that's all I needed it for. So definitely, do that. If you're going to buy an EV, don't be afraid to test drive it. I mean, you got to live with the car. It's especially if it's your daily driver. And I told the dealership that I was pretty adamant about it. And they were like, yeah, keep it for the day. Drive around, do what you normally do. They had it fully charged for me, ready to go. And it worked out.
So one last question before I let you go for the evening. You got your first vehicle. It's a Leaf. Do you see yourself sticking with electric vehicles in the future? Do you see yourself maybe just keeping one as your secondary car or maybe moving one as your primary car? What do you see yourself doing moving forward with electric vehicle purchases?
For now, probably just, keep it as a second vehicle, but definitely in the future. I mentioned it in that post I made on that EV Club about the Rivian R7, the little hatchback that's supposed to be coming out in 2027. That'd be kind of prime time for me to maybe get another vehicle. So I definitely would be interested in another EV. I mean, when I got into this, it was mainly a tool. I was like, okay, I got to commute to work. I don't want to put wear and tear on my other car. I need something for that job. Little did I know in 2 weeks how much I'd love driving this thing. Like, I'm looking for excuses now to drive it. Like today, I was like, I need to leave the house again for a while. I got to go somewhere just to drive this car. And so I can guarantee you in my future and our family's future, we will definitely have another EV. As far as like fully EV, that might be a hard sell just because how much we travel. Now, if EVs come along, if I can find one that's 350-mile range and I can get most of that charge back in 30 minutes or less, and there's ample charging network, I would consider it. But for the near future anyway, I'm definitely always going to have at least one gasoline-powered vehicle, mainly because, we like to take spur-of-the-moment road trips and go out southwest into the desert and drive around where there's not much charging network. So
nope, there's not.
Yeah. But as far as I could see myself where the gas-powered vehicle is parked for weeks and weeks at a time, and it was just used for trips. So I'm kind of hooked on it already.
Well, Matt, thanks for joining us today. The next time I get up to Northwest Arkansas, we need to meet up so you can give me a little test drive and show me the area in the Leaf. I do try to get up there a couple times a year. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. So I want to thank everyone for turning into this episode, and a huge thanks to Matt for joining us to chat about his Nissan Leaf. Just a reminder, you can find us on YouTube and all social media outlets by searching the EV Geek Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified when new content drops. We would love to read your comments, so feel free to share your thoughts. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/evgeek. Please consider becoming a paid Patreon member to help support and grow our podcast. Thank you all for listening today, and we will see you all again on our next episode. So long, everyone.
Thank you.